So thank you for the introduction. Again, my name is Annie Ernest, and if you have any questions about today's presentation, you just want to chat with me, I'm upstairs in the second floor of the Marriott Library, across the hall from the reserves desk. I think we're in 2701. So today I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking to you about kind of what we do in the Writing Center and hopefully how that might apply to how you assess student writing, how you respond to student writing, what kinds of things you might spend your time doing and what kinds of things might not be especially useful. I want to also talk about how you might incorporate writing into your classes. And I know that you guys are from a lot of different fields, and so you might have to be kind of creative in certain fields, but I think that writing is very much a part of our learning. In fact, Stephen King, I think it was, who's credited with saying, "I write to find out what I think." And I know that that's really especially true for me when I'm writing assignments, and maybe you guys have experienced that too, that you're not really sure how you feel about something. You kind of have an inkling, and then as you're articulating it on the page, you're learning, you're figuring it out, you're discovering. There's this great book by Bruce Ballinger that talks about writing as discovery, and that's in fact the way that I teach the writing courses that I've taught and how we kind of talk about writing in the Writing Center course. At the end of my talk today, I wanted to just talk to you about the different services that the Writing Center provides. We have an undergraduate writing center, so you could send your students to us for additional help. We have a graduate writing center, and we have a faculty writing fellow, a graduate student who just does consultations via email with faculty on articles that they're trying to submit for publication. So we help people kind of across the board at the university. So let's start with the first thing on your yellow sheet, and that is the hierarchy within our Writing Center. So there are 5 things, mostly. I mean, there's lots of stuff that we look at in the Writing Center, but we kind of break it down into these 5 things: assignment, focus, organization, support, and proofreading. And those are certain aspects of writing that you can put a finger on. Those are things that you can point out to students, to writers, with what's going on in their writing, instead of just saying, "Oh, it's good, I think you'll get an A," or "I don't get it," or it's bad, right? It's like, what part of it is good, what part of it is bad? And so the first one that we look at is the assignment. When a student comes in, we like having an assignment sheet so that we can see if the student did the task at hand. We find, especially with beginning writers at the university, that maybe they're not familiar with terms like synthesize, how that's different than analyze, or is different than summarize even. So often we'll see that a student was asked to analyze an article and they summarized the article very well, right? And so that's the first thing that we look at, is did the student do what they were supposed to do? And if not, that's where the tutoring takes place then, not at the commas, not at the effect versus affect, right? We talk about what it means to synthesize and what that revision might look like. Also, if it's supposed to be a 10-page paper and they've written 4 pages, again, it's not time to look at those smaller nitty-gritty type things. We're looking at how to expand ideas, what's missing, what's the heart of the argument, maybe try to help them find some resources, and the librarians do that too, of course. Then after we look at the assignment, we take a look at whether the writing is focused. And that often means a thesis statement. In most fields, I'd even say there's some kind of argument that the student is making. And so is that clear and concise, and usually probably pretty close to the beginning of the paper? Again, not always. We always have a creative writing major who likes to raise their hand saying, "That's not true in my field." I know, right? But we make sure that there's a clear idea and that they stay consistent with that idea throughout. And as you guys probably have experienced in the past, especially with really long papers, you start out with an idea and it sort of morphs. It changes as you do your research, as you've spent maybe weeks, maybe months on the project, and you no longer have that same concise thesis that you had at the beginning, and you have to continually play with that. So we look and make sure that that's there before we move into the next point, which is organization. And of course, you guys know what organization means, but there's a logical beginning, middle, and end. There's a logical progression of ideas, and that you get the reader kind of, that there are transitions that flow. We like to call that the F word in the Writing Center, the flow of the paper. And after that, we look at whether the argument is supported, that whatever evidence that the writer uses is effective. Did they summarize effectively or use paraphrase effectively? Did they use direct quotations when maybe a paraphrase would have served the purpose even better, right? We often see that writers, especially when they don't understand the topic, and we find this a lot of times, I think, with multilingual writers too, is that they'll take big block quotations out of the text, especially if their instructor points out that passage as being key, then they just plant it in the paper. Not a whole lot of engagement with it, not sure what purpose it serves, but they know it's important because their teacher said that this is important, right? So what we'll do in the Writing Center, let's take a look at all of those quotes, make sure that they do serve a purpose, that it's clear why they're there, and that they're cited correctly. This is also where we do our little plagiarism check in the Writing Center, and we don't tell on students. In fact, we never say, "You plagiarized this, didn't you?" Instead, we'll say, "Hey, where did you get this source?" And 9 times out of 10, they say, "Oh, I got it off of, Wikipedia. I got it right out of Google. I'll show you." And it's like, all right. So there was a misunderstanding then on how to give credit where credit is due, right? And then finally, we look at proofreading. And those are those sentence level issues, grammar, punctuation. And we do care about that. That's at the bottom of our hierarchy because in the Writing Center, we try to look at those larger order, higher order, more important, big picture issues with writing and meaning and thinking before we look at the sentence level. But once all of that big stuff is there, then we want to make sure that it's presented in a way that is professional and really is correct, right? And so we often see that teachers spend a lot of time in their feedback on the proofreading aspect. And so I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But what I've said in this sentence underneath is this list might provide you with the language to respond to your students' writing as well as help guide your assessment. So the language, I think, is important. I'm going to go off on a little tangent here, but I worked at Washington State University for the last 8 years, and there was this great presentation that I attended there where it was a wine tasting, actually, but you could do it with cheese or whatever. But it has, we tasted wines, and we were supposed to write down what we were experiencing. What did it taste like? It's like grapes or I don't know, I might taste some cherry in it, my mouth is dry. We didn't really have that language. Then we were given this wheel with all of the different flavors, oaky, buttery, this tastes like black licorice, this. I mean, it opened up worlds, right? And we were able to describe our experience, what we liked, what we didn't like. It's kind of in between this and this, we just were given that language to talk about the wine. And I'd like to say that these 5 words at least give us the beginning of that wheel in writing where you can point to something for a student and say, wow, I really understood your main idea, your focus was strong in your paper, the organization you just knocked out of the park, great job. But the support that you used, the evidence you used, not great, right? Because in our field, we use this type of evidence, not personal experience or something like that. So you can really point to what is working and what isn't in a piece of student writing.